Game week, magic words for any college football fan. Here we are after the long off season, the longest of any sport in America. It's come to an end. And Miami fans, you don't have to wait till Saturday to see your team play its first game of 2023. And as they say from time to time, do not adjust the set. It will be Miami versus Miami when you check out the Canes on Friday night. Welcome to the Voice of College Football and our Hurricane show that we provide for you each and every Wednesday night, courtesy Cam Underwood, State of the U, edition number 342.
Yeah, man, that's me. Glad to be here. We are 2 days away from the season opener. Our long national nightmare is almost over. We have made it through the off season to game week to, a couple of days, so 2 more sleeps, and then it'll be the day that we go to Hard Rock Stadium, reconnect with, our Hurricane friends, and watch the Canes play a team that they've played 3 times in their history, once in my lifetime, and hopefully get off to a 1-0 start in the 23 season.
All right, before we get to the on-the-field breakdown between the Miamis and the Canes are a 17-point favorite at home to open up at 1-0. Let's get to some recruiting news. And, of course, David Stone made his commitment known on Saturday that he is going to Oklahoma. No huge surprise there, but still a bit of a disappointment considering there was reported factions within his family that certainly wanted him to choose Miami.
It wasn't factions. It was like all of them. It was almost like, who was the one whose mama, Landon Collins? Remember when he announced at the it was the Army All-American game, that he was going to Alabama, and he's like from Louisiana, and his mom was decked out in LSU Tigers colors and screwed her face up and sucking her teeth on, rolling her neck and everything. It was one of those kind of things. And, for me, it's not great. And even people even David Stone himself said he was going to go to Miami. His family wanted him at Miami. He was going to pick Miami. And it came down to when he sat at that table to do the announcement. And he said, look, I have to be selfish. You know what I mean? I know that everybody is trying to get me to go do this thing. But in my heart of hearts, for myself, I want to go to Oklahoma. And he literally himself said that. And he wasn't trying to play or anything with the hat situation, because he reached for the Miami hat and then went to the Oklahoma hat. Literally, he came out and said no. He told 247 and a couple other outlets, that was literally him going through the process in his head of, I want to go do it. My family's, I'm gonna be selfish, literally. So it was very close. Obviously we can still take a run at him to flip him, and that very close is a great narrative, and it is a wonderful it's great news because the other players who've committed elsewhere have just been oh yeah, Miami was 3rd or 4th or whatever, and I'm picking whoever else. At the same time, I really don't care about the labor pains. Show me the baby. You know what I mean? This just adds on to what was it wasn't Falconer TRX, it was Kylo Ren Kane that was talking about earlier in the summer. I was optimistic because there were all these top targets at defensive tackle on the board. Most of them gone elsewhere or elected to go elsewhere, and it's really tough to handle because you need those guys at that position in this class by intentional design of this class, or the way that last class was built, this class and everything. So it's really tough. Hey, good luck to David Stone. I get that it's a tough decision. Sometimes you do have to be selfish and go for what you want, and if that's what you want, hey man, more power to you. Peace and blessings. But for the Miami Hurricanes, there's work to be done. So, if you're looking at defensive tackle, a guy like Aiden Breland from Southern California, not modern day, one of the other schools that wears red, like a Jay Sarah, I want to say. He's a guy that's on the board as a 5-star. You can talk about LJ McCray from Daytona Mainland, who's a guy that Miami wanted anyway. In your perfect world, you get David Stone and you get LJ McCray. But, in the absence of one, hopefully you get the other. Maybe you take a run back at TK Cunningham or TA Cunningham because his younger brother is TK. Maybe you take a run at David Stone. I don't know, but in terms of the defensive tackle recruiting, not unexpected, but you can get punched in the face while you're expecting it, and it still doesn't feel great. So that's kind of the way that I look at the David Stone situation. But on the flip side, Zaquan Patterson, 5-star safety from Chaminade, commits to Miami,
When
joins
did
his
that
teammate.
come down? I'm sorry to interrupt. When did that come down?
Which one?
Zaquan Patterson.
Earlier in the day. So they were listed at like 11 and 11:30, but it was at halftime of their kickoff classic games that were on ESPN.
Yeah.
Yeah, Zaquan Patterson was earlier in like the noon 1 o'clock hour.
My
That he
bad.
picked
That's
Miami.
the headliner.
Yeah. So I mean, hey, well, I mentioned David Stone because of something else we're going to talk about in this show today. But yeah, I mean, look, I didn't want to leave it by the wayside because we did talk about the struggles in defensive tackle recruiting last week. So I wanted to follow up on that. But Zaquan Patterson, hey man, that's a huge get against all kinds of major power teams. Another elite player from Chaminade, if you believe that you're trying to make a run maybe at Jeremiah Smith down the line. Hey, this is a great step along that path. But in a vacuum by itself, that this is a kid who's 6 foot 190 and has range and he can hit. Really, really strong player, a great leader, a great community guy, and everything. So, going up against big boys and getting him locked down that just continues to show really great recruiting chops by Jamil Burrows. Shout out to him for his recruiting. Shout out to him for his development because DJ Ivy, like I said last week, has made the 53-man roster for the Bengals. That's a team that designs or has the designs on a AFC championship and a Super Bowl championship potentially. And he made the 53-man roster as a 6th-round, draft pick, along with a 2nd-round draft pick from Michigan at corner in DJ Turner. But DJ Ivy was always in the right place. So if you're looking at Jamil Burrows, he coached up Ivy to the point where put him in a position to make a roster as a 6th-round draft pick for a contending team. Not any of that being easy, and then also goes on the trail and gets one of the best safeties in the country as well. So doing very, very strong work there. That continues to move the ball forward with the 24 recruiting class. Still work to be done, especially when you're looking at defensive tackle. But positive steps were still taken this last weekend.
Back to Stone, because I heard it before. We talked about it on our Oklahoma show the other day. And then you also went to that phrase that he used about, I got to be selfish, got to kind of be my own man type thing. Now, I didn't hear it explained to the degree that you did about making that decision literally last second. That is telling in a number of ways. So for me, that number one keeps alive Miami's pursuit of David Stone. That shows that being a firm commitment, that doesn't sound like a firm commitment to me.
Okay.
I
I think that it is. But I mean, hey, it could still be open for sure.
Okay, that's my number one thought. My number two thought, when he says a selfish decision, so I know anybody who's an adult that's had to make adult type decisions, and this being one of the first, I think I am safe in saying one of his first ever, maybe the first in his adult life. There's the component of I've weighed the pros and cons, the check boxes, and then there's just that just feels right. That feels okay, but this feels right. Mm-hmm. When he says got to be selfish here, my thought is, does he believe that Oklahoma can develop him for the NFL? He's more secure in that Brent Venables track record versus that, or is that more of just I just like the relationship and the feel there, so that's what it is?
Yeah, I don't know which one of those it is. I think that's reasonable that one of those is the foundation that he's operating off of to make that pick, whether this the gut feeling or the NFL prospects or whatever. Even though, again, we have guys who are putting guys in the NFL routinely with the NFL Hall of Famer, coaching, who would be coaching him because David Stone would probably flex between outside and inside. And I'm sure that with, you're doing rush moves and everything, you're working with Hall of Fame defensive end Jason Taylor. No, I do not get tired of saying that because that is a selling point. But yeah, at some point, and it's to the root of the word selfish. You know, I've had this in my own personal life where it's just like, yeah, I'm being concerned with myself over anything else, over anybody else's feelings, over anybody else's whatever, you know, because like I know that this didn't happen, but like if the Miami coaches were like, Dave, we need you to commit to Miami or I'm getting fired. If you get fired, that's tough shit for you, but I'm going to do what's best for me. You know, and that's a very extreme example, but yeah, he centered himself. And like, even if you watch the video of his commitment and everything, like one of his younger sisters has on like a Miami green shirt, like getting ready to put on the whole outfit. Like, like there's a lot, like all the family members there got like sour faces. Like it was not the celebration that you thought it was going to be because he took a path other than what they thought or wanted. But hey, I give him credit if that is what he believes. Good for him. I will never wish ill to a player because like there's a million players and we can find hopefully another player of similar, you know, talent and stature. It is a negative in this recruiting class that David Stone did not pick Miami, but hey, if that's the decision he wants to go with, good luck, Godspeed, and hopefully, you know, we're able to figure it out through other means, which maybe we've started.
Falconer TRX, thank you so much for the contribution. We always appreciate you being here. You are a mainstay. You are at the foundation of what we do here. We thank you so much for being here all the time. Falconer TRX, I apologize, and I do thank you and acknowledge the contribution over on the Florida State show, and that you wished everyone safe cleanup and recovery, and hope that everyone made it through safe in the hurricane. So thank you for sending that. We also have Falconer here with comment on Miami of Ohio trying to claim the U status.
No, because like they just no, just
you
no.
have to know who you are.
Right. I mean, like, and again, like, you know, their quarterback is the younger brother of Gabbert, of Blaine Gabbert. I think his name is Blake or Blaze or something, I believe. So like, there's that legacy there of his brother, like, you know, being a guy who got drafted in the NFL and, you know, had a cup of coffee playing and, you know, played well in college and everything. And it was a local reporter, a local beat reporter up there in Oxford, Ohio, who threw that softball. Oh, you know, who's the real Miami? Like, like you could just tell it was just like, you know, he's not going to say it. And I'm looking for a quote and it's tongue in cheek and everything. And like the Gabbert kid knows, like, and he's halfway decent. He had like 25 touchdowns and 8 interceptions last year. Like, you know, he's not terrible, but like the Miami Hurricanes should win this game comfortably. They should cover if we're going to have hopefully the kind of season that we desire to have, and play to the level of talent on the roster, which according to a second 24/7 sports evaluation is the 12th most talented roster in the country. You know, do you play like that? Hopefully. But like, yeah, Miami of Florida, like Coral Gables, you know, the U, has players that everybody in America wanted, and the institution in Oxford, Ohio has guys who, you know, are probably going to go pro in something other than sports, and might not have been looked at as, you know, high quality caliber recruits. And that's fine because everybody has a lane, but it is what it is.
Falconer TRX, we will get to your contribution and that topic, but we want to respect our guest coming in here. So we'll talk a little Red Hawks football and the matchup coming up on Friday night. We got another SB Nationer here, Steve Helwick with Hustle Belt, Underdog Dynasty, breaking down some Miami football on the other side for us. Steve, what's going on tonight?
I am located live in the Sunshine State right now. I'm about to do a triple header on Thursday night. I have UCF Kent State on the docket. Friday night, Miami, and my first trip ever to Hard Rock Stadium, and then going back to Texas Saturday for Houston UTSA. So really looking forward to this Miami matchup. I remember when it was scheduled, they call it the Confusion Bowl for a reason. I'm sure the announcers are going to have a great time with that, or they'll just use Hurricanes and Red Hawks more frequently than they usually do.
Steve, what about these Red Hawks? They've been like a 500 program the last 5 years, almost like clockwork every year. They're going to hit about 6 or 7 wins, be a decent team in the MAC. We hit on it a little bit. Brett Gabbert, 4 touchdowns, no picks last year. Avion Smith was their starting quarterback. Couple top rushers, couple top receivers back. Your thoughts about what the Red Hawks bring to the table in 23?
Yes, they're the model of consistency really in the MAC. Chuck Martin is now the MAC's longest tenured head coach at 10 years. And his offensive coordinator has been on staff for 10 years. His defensive coordinator has been on staff for 10 years. So there's a lot of continuity in this program. And Miami, they usually go 1-3 in non-conference play. They'll take out their FCS team and usually lose 3 other games. Last year, they snapped an 11-game streak. They won their first non-conference FBS game since 2011, excluding bowl season, defeating Northwestern at Ryan Field early on in the season. But before that, they hadn't won since 2011 against Army. So you don't see too many non-conference wins with Miami. But one thing you do see with them is they win in MAC play a lot. They haven't finished below 500 in MAC play since 2015. So even though they usually have difficult non-conference schedules to ramp up the year, by the time MAC play hits, this team's usually ready, and Chuck Martin has his guys going. And this year's Red Hawk squad, I actually picked them as my preseason and MAC champions. I know Toledo's a common pick. Toledo returns a lot of talent, but Miami basically returns about 9 starters from what was the MAC's top scoring defense and top run defense in 2022. And they get Brett Gabbert back at quarterback. And if you want to know how much impact Brett Gabbert has, I'll tell you this. In 2022, he played 4 games, missed the majority of the season. Miami had a bottom 10 passing defense. When he was a full-time starter in 2021, they ranked 21st in the country in passing. It is night and day. Their offense couldn't really accomplish much last year in his absence. So with Gabbert back in the lineup, I expect Miami to be a lot more explosive on the offensive side and in the passing game this year to go along with a pretty good stout defense.
Cam, you nailed it. I didn't want to call you out. You're right. 2 years ago, Brett Gabbert had that kind of season. Then he missed all that time last year. Right, Steve?
Yes, that's correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
I know what I'm talking about, man. Like, I don't just come out here and say random stuff. Like, yeah, you know, like I see you with your Phil Steels and everything. I got my CFB stats up here and everything, also as well. So yeah, we know, do the research.
But we were just talking last week about how neither one of us knew anything about the Red Hawks, and I just thought, where did Cam get this about 25 touchdown passes?
Hey man, look, I read everything and I do my research, which is like why I know that the Miami Hurricanes are 3-0 against the Miami Red Hawks. The games were 1945, 1947, and then 1946, and then 1987 being the last time that these teams played, with that being the largest margin of victory for the Canes of 54-3 the last time that these teams did match up. So I mean, I would love to see something along those lines. I think with the Gabbert kid back, that does present some challenges for a defensive secondary that is completely rebuilding. Well, not completely rebuilding, at least at the cornerback position, things are rebuilding because both of our corners from last year are on NFL, our starting corners are on NFL rosters. And there's going to be a big rotation of the other guys because, we have to find guys who can play. So I think that there's, it's not going to be, this is not the HBCU beatdown of the year. This is not going to be 77-3. I think that, and we saw things broke down some last year, Middle Tennessee State and others took advantage of those kind of things. So with somebody of Gabbert's talent, I think that can present issues at times. And I think it will present issues because I don't think that we're at the point of being completely and totally locked down. But at the end of the day, I do think that we just, there's too much talent on this roster for it to go the other way. But I've been doing this too long and I've seen things go the opposite way against the Hurricanes more than a little bit. So hopefully that does not happen this Friday night at 7.
I'm the nerd that likes the scores and stats and to look back and be like, oh yeah, I remember that game. Oh yeah, I remember that game. So I love this stat, Steve, about going back to 2011 where they don't have any FBS wins outside the conference. And I'm looking at these games. Yeah. And about half the time they're competitive. But about half the other time, how about this one, Cam? You would love this game, 76-5 against
Ohio State, 2019.
76-5. Good Lord, I do remember that one.
Hey, you got a safety in there.
They were up 5-0.
Zip.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Okay, yeah, I remember that game now. Yes. The
and they won the conference that year.
Steve, you love to focus on everyone. I know I bring you on for Group of 5 analysis a ton because those guys are tough to come by, and you are my ace in the hole when it comes to Group of 5, but you follow everyone. How do you evaluate this Miami team, meaning Miami of Florida,
Mhm.
coming into this season?
Well, I'm kind of excited to watch the return of Tyler Van Dyke. He's someone who has a very similar trajectory in his career to what Brett Gabbert's had. They both had stellar 2021 seasons. We saw Van Dyke wrap up that season with 6 straight games of 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, just dominant quarterback. But he never really got there last year. He was marred by injuries, just missed so much time. It seemed like he was always banged up or hurt the entire season. And I know that there is the discussion of his thumb injury going into this game, although Mario Cristobal and other players keep assuring he's 100%, but we should approach it with at least some skepticism in that regard. But I'm excited for the return of Van Dyke. I think he's a good quarterback, and I think that Miami could accomplish what they were set out to do in 2022 before the season. I do have some concerns on the offense. I don't know who their receiver who's really going to step up and snatch that number one receiver by the throat is going to be. They didn't really have one last year. I mean, Will Mallory was the guy, and he's now on the Indianapolis Colts. So breaking in a new tight end of Will Mallory's caliber, we've seen a lot of good tight ends, Brevin Jordan at Miami past few years. So breaking in a new tight end, I know they got a transfer from Oregon there that may compete for playing time. And then at wide receiver, they got Tyler Harrell, who's incoming transfer, maybe looking to be one of the top guys with Restrepo and Young. So I'm curious to see how their receiving core is. As far as defense, Cam Kinchins is as good as any safety in the country. He's a ball hawk. He's going to be a great run stopper against what isn't really an effective Miami, Ohio rushing offense. And he'll definitely make his presence known Friday. But I'm a little higher on the cornerbacks than it seemed like you were earlier, because I watched a lot of Devontae Brown at UCF, and he's a pretty solid cornerback. And UCF had a pretty good pass defense last year, which ranked in probably the upper third in college football in passing yards allowed per game. And then
It's not that I'm down on them per se, but like I've seen guys perform elsewhere and then struggle when the lights get bright here at Miami. You know, D. Delaney was first team FCS All-American. You know, he was projected as like a 2nd or 3rd round draft pick. He decided not to go to the draft and come to Miami, and those first couple of weeks looked like a fish out of water. So, you know, in terms of that, that's what gives me a little pause. In terms of the Brown boys, I've literally watched them play their entire lives. I worked with their father at Miramar High School for 11 years. I remember going to and talking through the film because they would win these Optimus championships year after year. So me and Selwyn were like this, who's a 2-time champion in college at Miami himself. So like I actually have been familiar with Devontae and Damari Brown since they were knee high to a fly. So like, yeah, I mean, maybe some people might not have been in on that, but like I'm in a unique situation where I was very aware of them and their growth and development through their entire lives. But in general, like to me, it's just unsettled at cornerback, because you had 2 dudes who played more than like 600 or 700 snaps last year. Both of those guys, DJ Ivey and Tyreek Stevenson, are gone to the NFL. And now there's a mismatch group of potential talented guys and Smurfs trying to figure out the rotation and depth chart thing at corner. And with so many teams with the proliferation of 3 and 4 and 5 wide offenses, you're going to need these guys not just to be halfway capable. You're going to need them to play meaningful snaps, in games and execute. And just simply Jaden Davis did it from the slot at Oklahoma. Corey Couch fancies himself as an outside cornerback, but he's smaller than Davis. So like you got 2 real pint-sized guys fighting for the snaps inside, and then the Brown brothers, Damari Devontae, Jadaeus Richard, on the outside trying to figure that out. So it's just, to me, it's really unsettled, because especially the way that Kevin Steele ran the defense last year, it was 2 on one side, 8 on the other side, set it and forget it the entire season long.
Well, rarely does a team win a game not being balanced on offense, but does Miami, just meaning the Red Hawks, just kind of cut loose and try to tear those guys up and throw it 45 times?
Oh, yeah. I mean, last year they had to redefine their MO offensively when Gabbert went out. They brought in Avion Smith, who was a running quarterback, didn't really have close to the same arm talent. And I said they were a bottom 10 pass defense in the country. Avion Smith wasn't completing balls more than 10 yards across the line of scrimmage usually, but he was a talented runner. But overall, I do have concerns about Miami, Ohio's offensive line. It's a unit that has a lot of continuity, and they return a lot of starting experience. And they get Sam Vaughn back. Sam Vaughn was their starting left tackle who got hurt in the opener against Kentucky last year, never played again, and also experience developed in his absence too, so they have depth at the positions. But that offensive line, they didn't have a very good running game behind it, getting under 4 yards per carry. No running back was really breaking out for 100-yard performances other than the one-time Keon Mosey went crazy on Northwestern. Other than that, I don't know if the Redhawks had a 100-yard running back the entire season. And then as a pass blocking unit, they allowed more than 2.9 sacks per game, ranking in the bottom 25 in the country. So I think Leonard Taylor, those Miami Hurricanes up front are really going to assert themselves against the Redhawks offensive line. I think we're going to see a lot of down and distance situations, 3rd and longs for Miami, Ohio. They're going to have to pick apart that defense with a pass. And the thing about that is the receiver position is probably where Miami, Ohio has some of the least experience. Is almost all their receiving yardage last year were allocated toward Matt Hippenhammer, and they need a new guy to step up. Hippenhammer had more than double the catches, receiving yards, more than quadruple the touchdowns of the next closest guy on the roster. But they brought in a few transfers, Joe Wilkins Jr. from Notre Dame, who hopes to see a similar trajectory to that of Hippenhammer, because Hippenhammer came from Penn State. He was hardly utilized there. And then he goes to Miami, Ohio, and becomes the number 1 guy. So I think they want to see that with Joe Wilkins Jr., maybe Cade McDonald, who they got from Michigan State, or an FCS transfer in Gage Larvadane, who was, I think, Southland Conference, all Southland Conference at the FCS. So they're breaking in a new cast of receivers, but I think given the coach's faith that they put in Gabbert, this is going to be Miami, Ohio primarily striking with a passing attack on Friday night.
So, Steve, before we let you go, do the Redhawks stay in this game? What's your feel?
I've presented this in my preview, and every show that I've appeared on this week, I have a final score of Miami, Florida 30, Miami, Ohio 21. And how I think the game plays out is I think that the Hurricanes establish maybe a 14-0 lead or something like that out of the gate and kind of remain one step ahead the entire game, where the Redhawks are down kind of 2-ish, 3-ish scores and keep softening the deficit, but overall it won't be enough. And Miami, Florida is going to dominate those trenches, I feel like, on when the Redhawks have the ball. And it's going to be a tough running day for the Redhawks, and they might face a lot of sacks. I think this will play out pretty similarly to Miami, Ohio's game against Kentucky last year, where they were able to move the ball pretty well, but they couldn't finish possessions. And Kentucky ended up taking them in the end and getting points on their defense. But for the Redhawks, their defense is pretty stout against the run, but I think Tyler Van Dyke's going to pick apart the back end and give the Hurricanes 30 points in this one.
I guess my follow-up question should be, what's your record against the spread?
This season,
I'm just kidding.
I missed Ohio, San Diego State, but I didn't foresee Ohio's quarterback Curtis Rourke getting hurt at the beginning of the game. Louisiana Tech, FIU, I missed the spread on that one. I thought Louisiana Tech won't miss all those field goals. They'd sustain their possessions and they win 22-17. I thought they'd blow them out. UTEP, Jacksonville State, I got that one wrong. UTEP just had terrible play calling in that game, and all they needed was one touchdown drive at the end to cover the spread. So in all the previews I've written this year, I think I have got the spread wrong. So my track record isn't good this season, but it's a small sample size, and we have room.
I'm just kidding, Steve. Just kidding. All right, Steve, appreciate you being here. Everybody check out Steve's work at Underdog Dynasty, Hustle Belt, SB Nation, covering 3 games this weekend. Steve's all over the map every weekend, from pretty much from Thursday to Saturday, traveling to games. So, Steve, you know what the deal is. If you have time after any of these contests, hit me up and we'll do a quick post-game hit if you've got that availability. But, Steve, appreciate you being here. Safe travels.
Sure thing. Hope to see you at the Bounce House or Hard Rock this week.
Definitely. I'll be out there, man.
All right. Good stuff from Steve Hellwick. Always at a Group of 5 game near you. And no, I was not serious. I didn't need the rundown of the prediction record game by game. But
hey, but he had it ready for you.
He had it. All right. Let's get to the other potential probable news at hand. One Jamil Burrows, defensive lineman, most notably out of Alabama. I was looking up his recruiting rankings. I could not find them. There were a bunch of N/A's all over the place as I went to 247 Sports. But what is your scouting report there, and your thoughts about, of course, enrolled at Miami? Everything looks good.
Yeah, you got to hit the drop-down arrows and select back to when he was in high school at McEachern in Georgia. He was a 3-star, 4-star borderline guy. He was invited to the opening finals. If you remember that event that used to go on the Nike recruiting trail thing. So like that was an elite collection of talent would go to the opening finals. And also he was an Army All-American in 2020. So yeah, this is a kid who has definite talent, got, maybe recruited over a little bit at Georgia at Alabama, because they're getting the cream of everybody's crop. You know what I mean? They're getting the top of the top of the top of the top, and a borderline 3-star, 4-star All-American, but maybe, if they have 75 kids in the All-American game, he's probably in the 50s to 60s. If you were to rank all of those kids, you're going to get recruited over, but he played last year, had like 14 tackles, 5 tackles for loss in 11 games, I believe. Saw one of his teammates, one of the offensive linemen, said that he was a great pass rushing defensive tackle. He was really looking forward to Jamil Burrows having the opportunity to show his skills this upcoming year. They parted ways. I don't know if you remember, but there was rumors or a report of a player punching a strength and conditioning staffer in the face. That would be this guy. So, yeah. Hey, it happens. But people make mistakes and they move forward. And if you want to make a direct connection, like there was another defensive tackle who left his previous school, transferred to Miami after having gotten into a physical altercation with someone, and that worked out very well for Miami and that player. And if you remember, that was Gerald Willis III leaving Florida after getting into a physical altercation, punching teammates, not staffers, and transferring to Miami. So, like, if you want to say, hey, we're here for the kid and want to give second chances and things like that, like we've done that in other situations. Also, he's apparently been on campus for a while. He's enrolled at the University of Miami, which I did not look, but let's look right now. University of Miami academic calendar for the fall of 23. So if we look at the academic calendar, come on, that one. Sorry, I had to click a button. But the last day of registration is today. Hey, there we go. So that actually probably just ended. So as long as he was enrolled for this semester by the end of business today, so a couple hours ago, he's fully enrolled in school, so he should be able to be on scholarship and things like that. But, according to everybody, around, as this news came out today, he's been enrolled. So, yeah, that adds a player with some kind of talent and definite experience from Alabama, at the defensive tackle position for the Hurricanes. I believe Burrow will play, not start. But look, you add a player at a desperate position of need from a probable a rotation role, if not more, at Alabama, if not for his nefarious punching people and whatnot in the past. But this is not a 1-to-1 replacement for David Stone or any of the other players, Justin Scott or whomever, that Miami has missed on at defensive tackle in this recruiting class, because you need those guys from high school for the long-term trajectory future of the program. However, adding a player of this caliber to this roster at that position is really good work. He has a couple years left, I believe. He's a first-time transfer, so this is not a situation where you should need waivers or anything like a Darrell Jackson as a second-time transfer who put in for that and got rejected when he left Miami to go to Florida State. Jamil Burrows, he went to Alabama, was at Alabama, left Alabama, and came here. And hey, look, it should feel very comfortable for him. You got Javion Cohen on this team. You got Tyler Harrell, who was there on this team. You know what I mean? You got a couple of players, and then there's other guys who were recruited from, the general areas and whatnot. So there's other Georgia natives on this roster that he can connect with and everything. This should feel pretty good for Jamil Burrows. And I think for everybody involved, with the Miami Hurricanes, this should be, it's not a world-changing addition. This is not Caleb Williams being dropped out of the sky and all of a sudden turning you into a ACC championship and national championship contender. This is not that. However, a small step is still a step, and I'll take it.
Folks, we've got an Amazon link in the description section of all the videos. And here's the deal. If you use the Amazon link, you help grow the channel. And it's exactly the same experience for you. It doesn't cost you a penny. We've tried this out with a number of people to make sure that it's the same shopping experience. It doesn't change anything for you, and it brings a small percentage of that Amazon wealth to the Voice of College Football. So that's a good thing. So please use the Amazon link. And again, we have posted that in the description section of all the videos. Comments and questions, we will take them as always here at the Voice of College Football. We've got 20 minutes left or so, something in that range. And or I will fire away. What's your biggest concern on Friday night?
Stupidity. Just in general, that can be penalties, that can be turnovers, that can be blown assignments on any and all sides of the ball. Things like that. Just the operations of the game not going well. Just like the stupid stuff, because like, if you line up, you like player to player, with some exceptions, but Miami's going to be a bigger team, like the Hurricanes, the Miami we're talking about. We know, if I say Redhawks, I mean them. If I say Miami, like every week, I mean us. So Miami's going to be the bigger team, right? Miami's the faster team. Miami's the way more talented team, right? Playing at home, all these things, you get the game early on a Friday of a holiday weekend, go celebrate with your fam, hang out, like take the day off of school and work on Monday, like hang, all those things. We all know all that, right? And it's just, if 21 guys are doing the right thing, or like, say if it's on one side of the ball, if 10 guys are doing the right thing and one guy is not, right? You remember when Georgia Tech hit us with that fake punt touchdown because DJ Ivey, who is now an NFL player on a 53-man roster, right, stood there frozen and like, oh, okay, what's going on? And the guy went past him. He was like, wait, what's going on? And then the punter from Georgia Tech was just like, cool, blur. And everybody else on punt coverage and everything was doing what they needed to do. But that one person at that one time wasn't. That's enough where it could ruin your day. And it's things like that unfortunately and overwhelmingly for the Miami Hurricanes have been not like a third down conversion into a first down. It's been like a random play turns into a touchdown on the other side when those malfunctions happen. And that's the thing that gives me the most concern. Also, just the variable and ineffable quality of injuries. If Tyler Van Dyke, if one of those offensive linemen misses a blitz and Tyler Van Dyke gets tackled on his shoulder, his throwing shoulder again, cancel Christmas. Like that is a thing that like we saw last year. And now look, there were many other issues as well. But Tyler Van Dyke gets an injured shoulder again, all bets are off for this season. All of them. And not in a good way. So those are the things that are really sticking out. And it's just like, I don't want to be once bitten, twice shy. But at this point, it's not even one time that we've been bitten. It's happened over and over and over, from this coaching staff to that coaching staff to this player who should be on the bench to that player who should be on the bench to this scheme we shouldn't be running. And like, it's just pervasive over the last 15, damn near 20 years now, we can call it, where these things have continued to go wrong. And the thing that gives me concern is like, that is who we are now. And I hope that it's not, and I hope that we prove something else. But like, if you're asking me like, what's an issue that gives me concern heading into this game, that more than anything is it.
You bring up that play against Georgia Tech, and I think of the punter. I don't know if he's still there with the Los Angeles Rams. Remember this punter they had a couple of years ago? The dude he could like throw like a quarterback. Like they did all these fake punts, and he would throw these, like lasers. That was an impressive throw from that Georgia Tech punter. Guy,
yeah, man,
quarterback in high school.
Look, a lot of punters were like, shout out to my boy Matt Carter, who was on the national championship team. He took over the number 11 jersey after Ken Dorsey left. But yeah, he was a quarterback in a smaller division in Ohio. And then he was, punter and everything, and had a beautiful throw on a fake field goal in 2004 at Virginia Tech that Kevin Everett decided to drop, and everything. But like, yeah, there's lots of talent in lots of different places. But like, if you do your job, and you're with the guy that you're supposed to be gunning up the field, it's not open like that. It's easier when like you have nobody rushing you and like you're like, hey, he's running full speed and I'm going to take this one thing and I'm going to throw it to a spot because I have all day to do that, is different than like if somebody were, running at him. But, it's just like these things keep popping up as happening though. Like if you look at most other teams have not gotten bombed by somebody else's punter. Like most other FBS teams in totality, right? But if you want to go back and you want to find one, we can start with the Miami Hurricanes, right? Can't we do that? Like these things where it's just like, oh, the one or two off in the last 20 years across the entire breadth of the sport. But in all of these different areas, the Miami Hurricanes are always an example of these wild things that never happen, but only a handful of times, if that many. And on each and every one of them, oh, there was the time it happened to Miami. Oh, that also happened to Miami. Oh, that also happened to Miami. That kind of thing is just like, it doesn't feel good, and like that's a thing that kind of I want to eradicate from this program, because like you don't have that with Georgia. You don't have that with Alabama. You don't have that with even a Tennessee. Like, yeah, they lost to Appalachian State, but like that game went down to the bitter end. You know what I mean? Like double overtime. Wait, no, they didn't even lose that game.
They won. They went to overtime, but they won.
Right. They went to overtime and won. Who did they beat the next year? It was an SEC team.
They lost to Georgia State or Georgia Southern.
Tennessee. No, Appalachian State went in somewhere and won.
Well, they went to Texas A&M last year.
It might have been that one or another one, yeah. But like, I just don't want to be on those lists. You know what I mean? Like it's just, yeah. Like if we're as talented as everybody says that we are, and everybody says that we are, when you look at this, recruiting class on this roster, there's guys that teams all over the country were falling over themselves to get. Again, in the latest update, or it's not like the blue chip ratio, but another, list on 247 Sports of the most talented rosters in the sport. Miami is the 12th most talented roster in the sport. We need to play like that, and we seldom have. And like, that's just where we need to be going with things.
12th most talented roster. That team goes 9-3, maybe 10-2 is what they're supposed to do.
10. I mean, honestly, like 10-2 should be the floor, because you're not going to be playing that many other top 12 talented teams. Like even if you played, this year we have 3 in Texas A&M, Clemson, and Florida. Even though Florida State, I would still say isn't. They have talent at the top of the roster, but they're still rebuilding the rest of it. But even if you put all 3 of them, right, you lose all 3 of those, that's 9-3, and you should be beating everybody else. If you win 1 or 2 of those, you're talking. How many times are you going to play teams that are as talented as you or more talented than you when you're that kind of talented? Infrequently. It's going to be the couple game season that we've been talking about. But the problem is, not only have we been consistently losing those games, we're finding ways to lose games to inferiorly talented teams, and therein lies the rub.
James Scott, thank you so much for backing me up on this one. So he lets everyone know, yes, the Amazon link works so easily. Just go to the bottom of the page where your recently viewed items are listed. Click on something you planned on buying anyway, and it traces back to Mark. I don't really understand that myself, but James has outlined everything. I just know, grab the Amazon link in the description section. If you use it, it's easy and it works. And it helps us grow the channel. All right, folks. Let's see. While I search for any other questions, my next one would be, what player are you most excited to see play on Friday night?
Nigel Kelly.
Oh, okay.
Look, this is going to be a theme for me all year long. Like, I'm in for a penny, in for a pound. That's my guy. Number 9 defensive end, should be starting. And, you know, as your earlier guest was saying, that if Miami, Ohio, the Redhawks offensive line isn't necessarily the greatest, and we have a guy who like looks to be taking a major step forward in terms of his pass rushing ability, I like that battle in our favor. So that's a guy. But honestly, like, at the risk of sounding nostalgic or homerific or old, I just want to see everybody out there, man. You know, everybody who should be on that field. I want to see Tyler Van Dyke healthy again, you know, whether he is a dinged up ring finger or whatnot, you know, from banging it on a helmet, or so. Another outlet leaked that he had a like almost broken thumb from hitting it on somebody's helmet, but athletic department asked those who were at practice not to report on injuries during camp, so that outlet decided not to adhere to that request. But hey, good on them. They don't work for the University of Miami, so it's not their job to hold water for the athletic department. So I understand them going with that, but also like everyone else who was there, not I, because new secret day job, I'm not being at practice because I'm doing my job, but everyone else who was, they're like, yeah, it wasn't even the thumb, and so what was reported wasn't even accurate, and so great job on that, guys. But regardless, I want to see Tyler Van Dyke out there throwing darts, throwing bombs. I want to see Xavier Restrepo being the Trent Harris of the offense, always in the right place, always doing the right thing. I want to see Tyler Harrell's speed. I want to see Ray Joseph's speed. I want to see, to the point of your hustle belt guest, Steve, he was talking about he doesn't know who's going to be number 1. Look, it looks like Jacoby George, again, in the offseason is proving himself to be the best wide receiver on the team. He needs to show it between the lines during games that count, though. Is he able to do that starting now? You know, does Colby Young continue to take a step forward? Elijah Arroyo, Reed Williams, all these other guys and everything, man. So there's a lot to see, and I just want to see what the beginning of this year's Miami Hurricanes team looks like with everybody on the field, hopefully without injuries. And, you know, we're going to get a little bit of a peek into what the scheme is going to be, because we're not going to, give everything away. But I want to see what the rotation is. I want to see guys out there healthy, flying around either with the ball or to the ball, depending on which side of the, field they're on, and just being successful.
We do this every Wednesday night here at the Voice of College Football. And now that we're in season, it's imperative that you show up and talk Miami football with us each and every Wednesday night to get the lowdown from Cam. Join him each and every day and the rest of the crew there at State of the U for your daily dose of Canes content, recruiting, and of course, now that we're in season, previews and player profiles. And all of that is available at stateoftheu.com, the very best on SB Nation.
Big facts. We do got a bunch of stuff up there. I have your How to Watch this week already up. The film forecast by Tatavio. So looking at some film from the Red Hawks from last year. Craig's Monday Musings. Still finishing up our position previews. Offensive line just went up. Rob Weaver looking at something interesting about the draft prospects of players on this team versus the success of the team this season, which is something you can dive into. Plenty of that and more. So come on over and fan with us at stateoftheu.com for sure, because we got what you need.
Folks, you'll want to be here as soon as the final gun sounds, 00 on the clock. We will have post-game right here at the Voice of College Football, Miami. So you can join us and commiserate, celebrate, do whatever you'd like to do. I would think it would be something in between. If Steve's little analysis and his forecast comes through, then it's going to be one of those lackluster. I'm guessing, Cam, we're not going to see a big smile on your face to open things up at 30-21.
Yeah, I was very intrigued by that, because everything that he said to support that was negative. Like literally everything. It was just like, I picked this number that's kind of around the over-under number, which is 45.5. It was 46 for the over-under. So like going over slightly to 51. But like, how did you get to 30 to 21? Just like, it was just like the offensive line isn't that good. Gabbert was hurt. There's not really wide receivers. There's things you can exploit on defense. This team has been 6-6. Sometimes they've been competitive, sometimes they've not. But 30 to 21, it was just like it was just like a random grab into the air for a number. It felt like to me. Honestly, I just think that the Miami Hurricanes should cover, or should be close to covering. So like it opened at 17.5 and went down to 16.5 on that erroneous report about Tyler Van Dyke's status. And then once that kind of got settled as being factually inaccurate, and went back up to 17 for the line. So like, you're talking 2.5 touchdowns, and he's predicting like half of that. Now, look, you and I both know the team that performed the worst in America relative to the spread last year were the Miami Hurricanes. Now that will happen when you're projected to win by 30 against Middle Tennessee State and you lose by that amount. So, I mean, there's, or like a 6-point line against Duke and then you lose by 40. So there have been, there were times that was really outsized. And so like, yeah, if you're looking like, you're taking the line as gospel, but like the Hurricanes have proven over and over again that like, they're not bound at all by what, the Vegas odds makers think of them. I could hear that, but just 30 to 21 just feels like last year's score, to be perfectly honest, and like what it would have been between these teams. And while I'm still on 7-5 for my record prediction, like, because the over under for the season is 7.5, I've been staunch on it's going to be 7-5, 8-4. I'm going the way of caution and saying 7-5, and I believe 7-5. I just really also, and maybe this is the Miami alum in me, have the hope that Mario Cristobal got it right with these coordinators, and we start to show that we're not last year's team. And that begins on Friday with a win that's at, near, or over the spread.
Somebody posted in the chat, this being much like the UAB opener from a couple of years ago. So I believe that was the opening game of the season in 2020, correct? De'Ara King at quarterback. And what I remember from that game was very methodical. Like Miami didn't just blow their doors off, but they grabbed a 2-touchdown lead and they just kind of nursed it all the way. And I believe it was like a 34-13 kind of final.
31-14.
31-14. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, similar, but also like that was entirely Operation Shutdown. Like and that was
better than this Miami team.
That UAB team was like a legitimate team too. Yeah. Like 8-4, 9-3. Like that was a pretty good team, all things, considered and told. But yeah, I mean, also that was Manny Diaz, so like he was still learning how to be head coach and went I know that people talk about Mario Cristobal being conservative, but like Manny Diaz's conservatism that day was, I mean, like what were I don't even know I would have to look at the box scores, but we ran the ball. Hold on, I can get to there. Rushing game log. Yeah, 52 runs for 337. And then threw the ball 27 times. So a 2-1. So yeah, we were just line up and pound the rock all day long against them. So, I think that we're going to try to operate a little bit differently, use some of the speed and things like that. But yeah, I think that, or I hope that Mario Cristobal, in getting to Miami towards where we need to be and operating the way that I think Miami should operate, getting it right, or righter than he had it before, because it was wrong with last year's coordinators. But getting it more right with the coordinators and letting the players play that way, I think will level things in the way that they should be, which should be, I mean, if this is a one-score game, I won't be pleased. And even with that 31-14, that 17-point win against UAB, that still wasn't really what it could have been. But like a one-score game or like a single digit. I mean, because 9 points, technically it's a 2-score game. Yeah, for the purposes of this argument, I'm calling it one score. Like a one-score game, that doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel good at all.
Because this is not not expected to be. The season needs to be played, of course. Not expected to be a top MAC team. They're like right in the middle.
Right.
And what I found astounding was the head coach, Chuck Martin's been there for 10 years. Did you hear this stat when Steve opened up the analysis? His offensive coordinator's been there for all 10 years and his defensive coordinator for all 10 years.
Yeah.
I doubt if that exists anywhere else in the country.
Yeah, that kind of continuity is seldom found in the world of football anywhere. Optimist, high school, college, pro, like, yeah, you don't have that kind of continuity. But then, like, it also raised both of our eyebrows when Steve was like, yeah, I'm picking them to win the MAC. And it was like, huh? That, like, this team is like, well, okay, well, yeah, Toledo this, and then it's like, yeah, like, you got to mention the teams that most everybody, like, this is kind of, like, if you're taking the Red Hawks to win this conference, that you're going on a limb based on their roster construction and recent performance and pretty much the trajectory or projection of this season. Like, you're going on a very thin limb, you know what I mean? To make that projection, which I don't know that, I wouldn't agree with that, but I also don't really pay attention to the MAC unless it's Tuesday
I don't
night.
either. So I shouldn't comment, but that took me back too. Now, Phil Steele believes that the other division is much better than Miami's division. He picks Miami second in their division in the MAC. He believes that the other division's much better. So he only has them as like the 7th best team in the league, but he has them second in their division.
Right.
And they actually, as Steve was pointing out, they lose all these non-conference. They've lost every non-conference game for 11 years. That's not an FCS game. That's unbelievable. Wow. So I'm looking at these scores, and you can just imagine. They love to play Cincinnati. They play Cincinnati every year, and they lose by like 21 points. But those Luke Fickell teams, 34-16 in the MAC in their last 50 games is the best record in the MAC over the last 50 games.
Interesting.
I would not have known that.
I would not have either. Cincinnati.
So when they keep showing up with this 6-6 record, they're basically going 5-3 in the MAC, and they're going 1-3 with outside the FCS win and losing to everybody else.
Interesting. It's about 2.5 hours, just over, from Athens to Cincinnati. So it's pretty local. It's like a high school, late playoff game bus trip, like you're rolling up somewhere for something like that. So, keeping it local, and you're probably going to, I know that the overwhelming majority of both of those rosters are Ohioans by, on both. So you're going to be playing in front of everybody's family both ways and everything. And it cuts down on the travel overhead and infrastructure and things like that. But yeah, at the end of the day and at the end of Friday night, this should be a Miami Hurricanes win. This should be a solid win. This should be a good stepping stone forward. And we're going to need to, iron out a couple creases and things quickly, because if y'all don't remember, Texas A&M is the week 2 opponent this year, as opposed to week 3, which is what it was last year. So, we're going to have to, it won't be the full playbook, but like, we're going to intentionally hold things back for ACC play. We're going to intentionally hold things back for like North Carolina, Florida State, Clemson. But like, besides those specific holdbacks, by week 2, if you feel comfortable running it in the playbook, run it. You know what I mean? Like that's going to, but I out a couple of things that we would like to, in a perfect world, hold back maybe a little bit longer. Excuse me. And yeah, the playbook will develop over the course of the year as players get more comfortable, the install sinks in and things like that. But yeah, we're going to have to stretch out a little bit, early because, got a big time, very talented team coming into Hard Rock Stadium, not this Saturday, but next Saturday for week 2 in the form of Jimbo Fisher's Texas A&M Aggies. So, we'll be back to talk about that for sure. But yeah, so we got to get on the good foot and start working some things out.
Hit the like button on your way out. Catch Cam and the rest of the crew at State of the U. Get on back here after the ball game, and we will talk it up here at the Voice of College Football. Cam, I appreciate it. Hope you're 1-0 after Friday night, and we will see you next week.
Sounds good. Take care.